Yeah, I think
Sounds
it's
good.
Thank you everyone for joining so promptly. Thank you for spending time with us on a Monday. Yeah, good day to talk about the future. Right? Talk about the future of this week and talk about the future of everything. Who are we? Where are we? What are we doing? Those are the things we should cover quickly before we really dive into it. We'll start with where are we? We are at the Combine. You're seeing that maybe at the bottom of the screen there. Beg you to look up thecombine.io if you want to know more about what the Combine is. We think it's the future of work. But we also host a number of events. Last week we presented this live. Some of you obviously couldn't make it. For any of you that did make it, I'm wearing basically the same thing.
I'm almost always wearing the same thing, yeah.
But the content will be the same, even tighter. So maybe you made a good decision. But we host tons of events. So if you want to come to other future events like this, hit up thecombine.io. And then in terms of who we are, great question. Max, Managing Director of OneMethod. OneMethod is a design studio that does so much more than design. And we get to work with you guys a lot.
Yeah, Corinne Pruden, Managing Partner of Faculty of Change.
and Jared Gordon, also one of the managing partners of Faculty of Change.
And Faculty of Change, for those who don't know us, is a boutique growth strategy firm. We're based in Canada, and we help a lot of mature organizations renew their impact, their growth, their relevance. We do that through our own proprietary research, a lot of ethnographic research for those who are familiar with that. And the second is strategic foresight, which is a little bit of a flavor of what you're going to get today.
Oh yeah. So speaking of today, what are we doing? We have 10 larger themes of change to walk you through. Within those themes, there are a bunch of predictions, some big, some small. And then it all really builds up to one report. We're sharing with you the report right now. We're also, within 24 hours, we're going to email out a digital copy of the report. And yeah, how did we do it? How did we bring this to life? Corinne, maybe you want to walk us through it?
Okay.
So throughout the year, we engage in thousands of hours of research on behalf of our own firm and on behalf of clients. And that involves kind of trying to understand things called weak signals of change, which are really early indicators of the future and the directions that it might be going in. Similarly, we do hundreds and hundreds of hours of ethnographic research activities that include in-person interviews, follow-ons, digital ethnography, like a whole slew of things. And we're constantly gathering these signals and insights through our work. And starting in around September, we start to think about our themes of change for next year. Now, understandably, trends aren't, or kind of these types of changes that we're talking about, social, political, demographic, economic, aren't governed by the calendar year. So, we find September is a great time to kind of spend some time reflecting, and we go through it, and we start to begin the conversations that involve the creation of these long lists that we distill down to the 10 that we're going to share with you this year. And just a quick recap of last year. So last year we presented 10 themes of change. 8 of them were correct for 80% accuracy. And going back to about 2017 when we started doing this, we actually had a question from the media about this the other day. We're roughly kind of hovering in that low 80% accuracy, which I think is good. Like, you don't want to be too accurate because that means you're not taking any big swings, and you don't want to be too wrong because then you're just Professor Galloway. We had eight right last year, and we'll talk about 2 that we're really comfortable with. And then we had 2 that we were wrong about, and that's kind of informed by direction for this year. We got our approach to AI probably, I would say, wrong, and that's largely just because of how quickly things are evolving there. Similarly, some of the social impact of depression and the ketamine aesthetic and things like that. While I think we were accurate on the rise of ketamine as an alternative to other kind of party drugs, some of the social impacts we missed, but I think we're going to reflect well in items that we discussed this year. 2 that we're really comfortable with and happy about where they landed was our responses to devirtualization. So, understandably, following the pandemic, everyone going outside and having an urge for connection was kind of widely reported on, but the approaches that we thought to it were, largely around devirtualization, primarily on these shared emotional experiences, of which things like concerts are huge. And so last year was the best year in recorded history for live music. and it was 23% greater, so 23% higher concert revenues than any year on record. This isn't like 5% growth, that's 23% growth. And the Sphere kind of highlights a lot of that. The Sphere is a new concert venue that was built in Las Vegas that you can see here. It is a fascination of mine. Next, we talked about kind of the issues and challenges with using influencers, both to communicate your brand strategy and some of the challenges that they might face. Recently this year, Pookie, You're So Fired, she got canceled in nearly record time. But there was a whole college mascot bowl around the Pop-Tart mascot, and kind of the movement towards mascots as alternative to human influencers was something we talked about and something we saw a lot of in the last year, and something that is very close, near and dear to my heart. Big mascot fan. And so, what we'll do is we'll kick off. We got 10 great themes. If you have any questions or comments, post them in the chat. We are monitoring it, and we might come to it in real time, but definitely at the end we'll reserve some time for some digital Q&A. So next.
First up.
Woohoo! Number one. Okay, thanks so much. Enshittification. Hopefully you're reading that word on your screen right now. This is a fun one to start with. Curious how many people are familiar with this term. It's actually just about a year old, just had its 1-year birthday 2 weeks ago, I think. So yeah, basically just over a year ago, this author and digital activist from Toronto named Cory Doctorow penned a blog post, and in it he had the term enshittification. And then, a few weeks later, Wired Magazine republished that blog post and really introduced it to the world. And then just 2 weeks ago, almost on the 1-year anniversary of that word, let me jump to that, the American Dialect Society crowned it the 2023 Word of the Year. So enshittification became the Word of the Year. And I think, let me just dive into it, anyone who's not familiar with it. So Doctorow writes, here's how platforms die. First, they are good to their users. Then they abuse their users to make things better for their business customers. Finally, they abuse those business customers to claw back all the value for themselves. Then they die. I call this enshittification. Now, another term for this is platform decay, which maybe some people are more familiar with. And it's really about how these digital platforms, largely starting with venture capital, make things amazing for the user and then sort of flip the script and start prioritizing profits, and things become shittier for both the end user and even the business users. For a two-sided marketplace, they don't really suffer the same laws as capitalism. So what they're really doing is they're selling attention and access. So they can actually pull the lever behind these sort of darker algorithms and control things in ways. And the article is fascinating. We'll link to it in our report, so you can really dig through it if you're interested. The examples they use in the article are Amazon and Uber being sort of prime examples of enshittification. And I think maybe you're asking, okay, so this was Word of the Year in 2023. How is this a trend, or how is this a theme of change? And it's a fair question. But I think up until now, really, it's been more theoretical, and people are becoming more and more familiar with the theory. And what we think is that it's going to become more practical. We're going to actually see the effects of this theory becoming widespread. And so some examples of that are, there's this Penny Hoarder blog post recently shared this idea of how you can download the Uber driver app to skip surge pricing. That was a really interesting signal, how people are going to actually be tricking their algorithms. And that in itself, we also saw lots of TikToks this year become really popular. How to wipe your Instagram page completely and then curate and really craft your algorithm and trick it to be the way that you want it to be, which is fine. That became a trend on TikTok, all pushing towards Instagram. And so our big prediction here is, and I've already mentioned it, is this year you will trick your algorithm. You will do something in a way that tricks it. Maybe you're going to download the Uber driver app to skip surge pricing after a festival or a concert, or maybe you'll try to trick Instagram. But the interesting shift here really is, last year, Jared, you talked about training algorithms. Yeah. People were sort of more peaceful with it. It was almost cute. And it was like, oh, I'm going to train it. And now it's we've shifted to be at war. We want to trick them. We want to fight it. And so, we think that the implications here really, beyond the prediction, are I mean, doctoral writes about how there might be co-op run platforms, which would be kind of interesting. We're less concerned with that. And that would be a scenario where a bunch of brands who sell things online would start their own Amazon. And so that could actually undercut this because there'd be cooperative and they wouldn't necessarily work together to undermine everyone. But I think what we're concerned about is really, if you're a brand or you're a company and you're using these algorithms and you've been using them for years, we all are, but all the audience is now have a total different mindset and sort of relationship with those algorithms. We need to be mindful of people and how they feel about them if we're going to insert our brands and our messages in that space. So that is something that is going to happen this year 100%, that we need to be mindful of. But then, of course, download those apps and trick the algorithm to save some money on you. That's number one. So hopefully everyone's following along. We got 9 more and a few palate cleansers to throw in the mix as well. But yeah, on to number 2.
Number 2, the end of self-help. So thank you. This theme reflects on the evolution of the self-help industry, the industry that has frankly been forcing us to, driving us to unlock our potential, do more, achieve higher. And frankly, taking stock of all that, we sort of predict that 2024 will finally have us being a little less ambitious and a little less emphasis on self and a little more emphasis on health. So digging in, the self-help as an industry has evolved from books, cassette tapes in the 80s, for instance, on how to quit smoking for good, to today, to helping you become the best real estate agent, athletic influencer, most successful, so forth. So frankly, when you look at that, improving a skill or getting rid of a bad habit or even creating new good habits isn't really considered ambitious enough anymore. As an industry, as this has evolved, we've slowly been herded towards perfectionism. People like Tim Ferriss, Tony Robbins, Andrew Huberman, who are to some visions of perfection, they really trade on this idea. They promote their uniquely designed programs backed by science that will optimize the body, quiet the mind, and unlock your potential for future success. The Huberman husband specifically over the last year has been both hilarious and maybe a little bit terrifying to some. It's effectively a bunch of people who are obsessed with their self-improvement rituals, like doing cold plunges and taping their mouths at night before they go to sleep. Not entirely sure what the science is behind all of that, but hey, it's grown as a ritual, and it kind of speaks to the fact that we're obsessed with becoming perfect. Self-help or self-improvement as an industry has grown into a $13 billion industry. The very growth of this industry is sort of predicated on an unhealthy paradox. To improve yourself, to achieve all this success, you have to have full awareness of every waking and every sleeping moment of your life. It's alienating, it's exhausting, and it can be really expensive when you consider all these rituals like cold plunges and so forth. But it also has us believing that if we don't engage in these rituals and take all these super fancy vitamins, that our transformation will be stunted and we won't achieve success, we won't become perfect. So, has this industry really been helping us, or is it really feeding or fueling our societal anxieties? We think it's the latter, and frankly, when you take a look at it, it's every pressure to succeed and be perfect deepens our individual burden for that success, but also removes the focus on the people around us, on the community, and how we can help each other. So it's this balance of the more I focus on myself and becoming perfect, the less I'm focusing on those around me and the communities around me. Life is hard, precarity is real, and the world is pretty chaotic. And so we believe, breathing deeply isn't really going to cut it. So the prediction, we believe that the future will hold something a little more akin to the past. Perfection will be rejected. Instead, we'll celebrate being slow, being real, being imperfect. I think the best example that you brought forward around this was the Slow AF Run Club, which is a tremendous community that has grown over a number of years. And the founder of which has started running when he wasn't, in the physical shape and didn't really have the body of a runner. And his motto is, or the group's motto is, to empower every person on this planet to become a runner in the body that they have right now. he himself doesn't strive for improving his time with every race. He consistently comes in the last cohort of every race he does, no matter which city he's racing in. I think that's, there's something really beautiful and magical about that. Enjoying the journey instead of striving for the outcome. This has huge implications for how we value and evaluate success, performance, society, even in the workplaces. We also see that this could have a tremendous implication in 2024 as we focus less on ourselves and more around people around us, which means we'll have a little more capacity for improving society and supporting one another. We expect things like a modern resurgence in cooperative movements like the one you were reading about, workers' unions, and mutual aid organizations. That is it for self-help.
Have you read any Tony Robbins books? Anyone?
I have not.
I got halfway through his last one.
Okay.
It was interesting.
Yeah.
But not full book interesting.
Kareem was invited to speak, not to your horn, you were invited to speak last week at one of his longevity seminars in San Diego. Okay.
Yeah, we'll talk about longevity in the last few. Yeah, we have some thoughts there too.
So for the next thing, we're going to talk about natural rhythms. And really, what we're dealing with here is a response to climate change. We always expected climate change to be mitigated by like large scale government intervention, things like geoengineering, injecting sulfur into the sky, or, the Inflation Reduction Act in the States that's really about solar panels, wind farms, green energy, electric cars. But the fact is that we are the ones who are creating responses to climate change. And one of the first ones that we're seeing as like a human level is this people retreating to the dome. Dubai has built out a network of night beaches because effectively the beaches are useless during the day. So they're illuminated beaches you can go to at night because who wants to go to the beach when it's 45 degrees outside at Celsius for our American viewers. McDonald's has a new concept called Cosmics that's designed not for breakfast, but for the 3 p.m. plus, so snacks, caffeinated drinks, etc. More dessert oriented, understanding that people's lives are not beginning at 6 a.m. anymore. Mainly their days are starting to get rolling around kind of 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And even like the Alpine Ibex, which was formerly a diurnal animal, one that kind of hunted during the day, has shifted to hunting at night because it's just kind of so unpleasant for it as an animal to be there. And that's kind of, what we expect. These adaptations will come from us, and that we will be the first to adapt. Different ways that we're seeing this is Uber traffic. After 9 p.m. it's kind of up dramatically. And, people are kind of retreating back into the night because it is so difficult to be outside during the day. And other things are Virtuoso, which is a fantastic travel network, is seeing a rise. 82% growth actually in climates considering colder climates for off-season travel. The idea being is that it's just not as pleasant to go anywhere in July and August anymore. And so, what are some of the implications that we're seeing here? Besides kind of bringing back late night eats and 24-hour restaurants, really it's understanding that we're going to see human adaptation to the climate crisis before we start seeing kind of institutional and infrastructural adaptation. The move to electric is coming for sure across heating, cooking, driving, etc. But that's still many, many years away. So understanding that people are going to start changing their behavior in response to kind of some of these temperature and climate shifts that we're seeing, and how can we support them, anticipate them, and enable some of these adaptations? It's really kind of the question I think that's going to be germane while we wait for our flying cars.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now we have those palate cleansers we were talking about, what we've titled the Precycling bin, the recycling bin for our predictions that didn't quite make the cut. They're things that we had a lot of love for and sparked a lot of conversation, but they weren't as rich or deep or as much connected to a broader shift.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Yeah.
Okay, first up, so I think we have 6 of these. First up, we have driptogenarians. So driptogenarians is really a signal we saw that young people are actually going to take more influence from older generations. And I think anyone who's of my generation knows in the 80s or 90s or 2000s, like old just equal to old people in movies were the villains just because they were old. But what's happening is we're seeing that younger audience are actually looking to older people in our society and seeing a lot of similarities to sort of Gen Z and even Gen Alpha, those sort of early little indicators of what they like. They're just less not trying to. They're healthier relationships to tech, less not trying to be as fast or trying to be as overproductive, and there's just a lot to share. So yeah, driptogenarians is something we're going to see more of this year for sure.
We're thinking that 2024 and beyond is LinkedIn's moment, not because LinkedIn is especially good, but more about these kind of purpose-built social networks. But before we kind of dive into some of them, if you're not following me on LinkedIn, I would highly recommend it. If my colleague Dylan could drop my LinkedIn in the chat, that'd be great. Just build my social reach. Last year, we talked about the rise of these virtual dark forests, which was the idea that people were posting less in public channels, more in private. The group chat was much more popular than your own Facebook page. And so, we kind of see this continuation of these purpose-driven social medias. Strava, which is a fitness-oriented social network, now is messaging, right? So, people moving to Strava over Twitter, and these more niche networks versus some of the more popular ones. One of them that I thought was released the other week was from this team of, for lack of a better word, like downtown scenesters in New York called Perfectly Imperfect. And so it's just a place where you go and post things that you like. And so here were some of the recommendations from this social network. Telling your loved ones you love them, which, I'm all for that. Hash brown patty on a breakfast sandwich, again, very, very delicious. And then listening to Bruce Springsteen at the Jersey Shore near Ashbury Park with an Italian-American family. I have not had an opportunity to try that, but if anyone does or wants to, please do let me know. I am open always for trips to Ashbury Park, New Jersey.
I love that they're called Perfectly Imperfect.
Yeah.
Works well for one of the predictions.
Yeah.
The third one is everything micro giftable. So everyone knows, or hopefully this wonderful new feature New York Times launched where you can gift an article. Lots of other publications online sort of jumped on the bandwagon. You can now gift articles in Globe and Mail. It's sort of this amazing little sneaky Trojan horse where you can give one person an article and they get to read that article, but maybe provides a bit of an impetus for subscribing for the publication in full. So it got us thinking about what else could be, micro giftable, like a show or a single meal in a meal plan or a meal program. Others, please feel free to drop them in the comments. This is the reason why it didn't make the full theme. We didn't know where else to take it. So there's this one.
Okay, back to the main show.
Are we losing ourselves? So this one captures a shift in how we understand personal identity, especially in the digital age, and how that affects how we understand consumer behavior, and more specifically, a prediction around how we believe we'll continue to study consumer behavior. So for marketers on the call or on the webinar, please listen up. At Faculty of Change, we work with a lot of anthropologists. Anthropologists love to talk about personhood. I know we have some anthropologists on the call, so feel free to drop in the comments. So a little bit of theory to get us going. Our sense of what a person is has always been on a sort of spectrum. On one end, you have the individual, which is a discrete being that exists in society among other discrete beings. It's like this self-contained little me with other little me's around in society. That's what the anthropologist C.B. McPherson called possessive individualism. On the other end of the spectrum, you have what Marilyn Strather, another anthropologist, referred to as the dividual. That's a notion of personal identity or the self that is made up more of its relationships, its rituals, its context. It's a individual doesn't understand itself as like a discrete me in society, but rather as a combo of identities that depend on the context, the interaction, the relationship. Hopefully everyone's still with us. We're good. Okay. As a North American society, I think it's clear we've always tended a little more to that individual notion, individual leaning form of personal identity. Thank you for shifting these slides. But we are seeing a shift towards the multiple and the contextual, this more individual notion of personal identity increasingly. And if you think about it, the pillars that have held up the individual self have slowly been disappearing. one life partner, romantic partner that your one true love, one job, one career for your entire life, one home that you pay off, hopefully for the duration of your life. I mean, that's definitely not achievable anymore, but people are definitely shifting towards the other end where they're becoming more comfortable with their individuality, multiple partners, multiple jobs, multiple gigs. Effectively, they're, giving rise to different identities within the context. Best expression of this, the influencer. There's no expectation in today's day and age that the influencer is being authentic. We all acknowledge that an influencer is playing a role on an account, on a platform, and they might have multiple accounts where they play multiple different kinds of roles on different kinds of platforms. So the digital age and the many platforms we navigate have sort of increased this tendency towards individuality. A recent study found that 70% of 15 to 19-year-olds use Instagram's close friends feature. That's a feature that allows them to target which of their followers get to see what content they are viewing, as well as enables them to curate their identity based on these different multiple types of audiences. Another study conducted by MasterCard found that Gen Z feels more comfortable expressing themselves digitally rather than in real life spaces. So if we're moving more towards the individual, away from individuals, what does it all mean? Well, we live in a consumption-based society, and a lot of the way in which we express our personal identity is with the stuff we buy, the stuff we wear, the stuff we eat. So when identity is contextual, it's individual, how do we as marketers, as strategists, understand people? How do we communicate effectively to them? How do we innovate for them? For us, we predict that 2024 will start to see this evolution of consumer behavior, and more specifically, how we have to study consumer behavior. For example, personas. How many times have we been in a marketing meeting where we're talking about a persona? Meet Sally. Sally is a 35 to 45-year-old homemaker. She lives in the suburbs. Sally is a member of a bake club. She follows lots of bakers on Instagram, famous bakers, local bakers. She's really into it. Sally's also a member of a downtown swingers club. Sally has lots of different identities and interests. So can we really fit all of Sally's, identities and individualities into one single persona? And if you're using that persona to build a campaign around it, you might risk alienating parts of Sally's individual identity as part of that campaign. So this calls for a bit of a marketing rethink. Traditional industry tools like customer segments, personas, will start to falter because they're based on demographics like age and gender, and even psychographics like beliefs, interests, lifestyle. These things will start to lose their analytical and predictive power because we are a little more individual than we have been in the past. So this requires a shift away from thinking of these segments and personas as being fixed to being a little more about behavioral contexts and relational needs and consumption habits that are a little more fluid and maybe interconnected. We're workshopping what we could call them in the future, but we thought of identity agnostic need clusters as an example. So marketers take note.
Yeah, if you have any better suggestions, please feel free to comment or email us.
I love that one. That one, individualism, is the one that's probably come up for me in the last 2 months in meetings and sort of in collaboration with clients the most. And then I like hanging out with friends. Enshittification, that one's come up a bunch. That one's just so sayable. But on
tell me, Max, you're not going out on Sunday nights?
Well, that's my question. What do you guys do on Saturday?
Sit on my couch.
Yeah.
Saturday, I had friends, but we were in bed by 10. So yeah, love this one. This one is my favorite type of signal, actually. We worked on this whole report with a big team. Lots of people helped contribute. It's not just us. And one of the people much younger than me, I won't talk about you guys, but my age, person much younger, came to the table with a signal saying she realized her friends are partying more on Sundays. That was such a nice, juicy signal, but of course it was anecdotal. So then we dove in and we definitely found some interesting stuff. But I mean, zooming out, just know like Saturday's been Saturday since forever, like since before Christ, Saturday has been a thing. Really started with religion, cemented by more industrial patterns. And it's just been for centuries Saturday night. About 30 plus years ago, with the rise of the modem and the internet, people started making aggressive predictions that the days of the week would erode and Saturday night wouldn't be what it was. Great article in the New York Times about that. But it didn't happen. Like it just Saturday stayed Saturday until recently. I think really recently we're seeing a big shift. So we dove into it, and one of the big signals is, I think it'll be obvious really, it's like Mondays there's just the least traffic. And so I think obviously it's hybrid work is what's driving this. So hybrid work could be the thing that's actually come out and killed Saturday night and really made the days start to erode their meaning. Tom, this is a signal from Tom. They share real-time stats for Toronto. You can look today at what happened today or what happened last week. This is from 2023, the whole year. It supported this theory. And we see this around the world, like Sydney, Australia published their rail data, same thing. Mondays, least traffic. Fridays, also low, but even more than Mondays. And then, there's other evidence too, like Sundays are just outperforming bars, or outperforming Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday at bars, which is crazy. We watched this this talk on the future of drinks, and this was one of the most interesting nuggets. I mean, we should just do an alternate one maybe in the future. But this was real interesting, and again, has larger implications. There's other places we look to, like on TikTok, hashtag Sunday has 20 billion views, and hashtag Saturday has less than half of that. Sunday Fun Day is double the amount of TGIF. So you can see Sunday is also just bubbling up in a cultural sense. And so our big prediction is, and we kind of alluded this to, you're going to party more on Sundays. Maybe you're already ahead of the curve. And it'll just be easier for you. But I think for the rest of us who are maybe slower to it, it's just going to probably bubble up, or more and more you're going to be like, oh, there's a thing on Sunday? I never thought about that. And, the reason is you can be hungover on Monday, you can get paid for it, and you can just chill and you don't have to commute. Like everything's just a little easier, and that's just going to start to erode what the days mean. So that real shift is centuries where days meant something specific. Now they don't. And I think for brands and marketers and strategists, it's really about being mindful of how day parting, contextual advertising has never been easier and never been more powerful. It's so easy and so smart for us to leverage those tools. But if what the days mean and the context and the contextual advertising we're doing, if those things have totally shifted, we have to be mindful of that, or else you're going to look totally disconnected. So that's a big one that's, I think, easy to understand, harder to act on. And then I guess other implication is like you're going to be on Zoom with people Monday mornings who are sneakily. Maybe you were a few hours ago watching us live.
Don't worry, we're not.
Yes, no sir. Emotionally hungover. It's a big Sunday, but halfway point.
Yeah, Susan Dorley, Orchid Thief author. She has this book. I think it's from the late 70s and early 80s, where she went around the United States and experienced Saturday night in all different contexts. The book's called Saturday Night, and she goes to a nuclear missile site. She goes to an all-women's college, and she goes driving in a small town where they do loops around Main Street, and it's really fun. I would highly recommend it. High levels of relevance still today, 40 years on. So there, over the past kind of decade, there's been lots of conversations of the promise and enablement for self-fulfillment that the creator economy would provide. Kevin Kelly, the original author or founder of Wired magazine, had this concept of 1,000 loyal fans. That in the future, all you would need would be 1,000 people who'd be willing to pay you $10 a month, and then that could support you in all your creative and artistic endeavors. But this idea that we'll all be able to monetize our lives doing what we love has kind of really it hasn't proven to be true. And part of it is the platform crisis that Max talks about, the Enshittification. And really what happened was that art was a form of individual expression. Right? It was something that we did to kind of put ourselves in the world and express who we are and share it with others, or even to better understand kind of who we are as individuals. When we had this talk about the creator economy, it was this pivot really to commercial individualism, touching on what Corinne talks about the individual. It's like, I am going to create and promote and sell the version of me that will generate significant revenue. But the fact is that revenue hasn't proven for most people to be sufficient to, quote, sell it, where like, what has ended up happening is the creators are really suffering at the hands of these big platforms, grinding out this kind of content to make their feeds interesting so that new users that are on the platform are going to engage and kind of continue to use it. These platforms can hit the metrics, but the people creating and posting the content, they're not getting that sense of self-satisfaction that they would have. And so the truth is that, when we talk about this, that these creators really aren't making sufficient amount to kind of keep participating. But at the high end, you have these creators that are more popular than TV stations. We live in a world where Yellowstone, which is the most popular show that either, if you might watch, or definitely your parents watch on TV, gets 7 million views, right? An episode generally gets about 7 million views. The threshold for TikTok or Instagram Reels for what gets 7 million views is so low, that if we shared some of those videos with you, you might feel slightly uncomfortable, right? And it's, none of those videos cost $100 million an episode, right? So the reach that like these top level creators have is much greater than any kind of popular public media. And there's been this retreat that people just want to have fun again, that hobbies are going to be about self-fulfillment. And what I think is interesting is that these idle hobbies, sitting in your garage with model trains or tunneling with the boys, they're about kind of mastery, continually getting better at the craft you're engaged in, versus when you're doing it for others, it's about monetization. What is it that I can express to myself that people will pay for? And there's been this resurgence in tunneling, right? Tunneling is the ultimate expression of doing it for yourself. You can't see it above ground. It's like this solo idle pursuit, but people find it satisfying. There's Tunnel Girl on TikTok who's been digging a series of tunnels under her house to the point where her house got condemned. There's the Hasidic tunnelers in Brooklyn, New York. There's Eel Guy, who has built a giant pit in his basement to study eel reproduction, which is apparently something that is very poorly understood. Yeah. And what's funny about these is that this goes back to 2013, 2014, when in a park in suburban Toronto, police stumbled upon a network of tunnels that was the work of a group of dads who were just looking to make themselves a man cave and got really into tunneling, So I'm not saying tunneling is going to continue to be big in 2024 and the years to come, but what it represents, right? These types of hobbies that are purely for self-fulfillment, self-actualization, you're going to see much more of it. And how do we support people on these journeys to mastery, right? This kind of self-imposed, self-discipline oriented, experiential journey is really a big question, I think, for all of us as we look to serve and enable consumers. The girl inside all of us, and that girl is capitalism. What I like about doing this in front of a camera is that I don't have to see people's faces and how cringy they get when I start to talk about this and how uncomfortable it makes them until they start to make sense of it for themselves. So 2023 was presented to us as the year of the girl, us being all this, girl math, hot girl walks, girl dinner, the mob wife aesthetic, all these things became very topical in 2023, and that conversation has continued into this year. But really what we're seeing here are these huge questions of identity being served up to us in kind of the guise of marketing and in popular culture. And they're kind of, that's not really a big issue themselves, but like we try to understand in all these themes that we're talking about, like the underlying forces, lots of times it's social, culture, political, demographic, but in this case, the they here is capitalism, and there's the economic benefits to many kind of brands and these platforms and the people who kind of can pull some of these strings. They want the girl to be the main character in 2024. In their mind, the girl is a shared narrative of this imagined you state where there's kind of little responsibility for the greater fate of this world. And like the title, we went back and forth on, because the fact is that like girldom really is gender agnostic in 2024. There's baby girl men, and but really what it is this kind of response to maybe the world being too much, but trying to enforce this marketer's dream state. Now, I'm sure I've lost a lot of you. But really what we're talking about here is that there's nothing wrong or negative inherently about girly characteristics, but rather, let's try and understand the forces that are amplifying and encouraging these types of, girly coded behaviors, right? Girl math, right? Girl math is the idea that, you can self-justify any purchase behavior through mathematics, right? And then that's being associated with girlydom, but men are being asked, being taught to, like, what is their Roman Empire? And like, when we think about these kinds of distinctions, really what is being communicated? And we're going to see kind of continued exploration and encouragement of and promotion of girly without this engagement of the underlying socio-cultural issues at play. Kind of that's our own personal responsibility to bring them up. And I think it's important to have the conversation about, is girldom just a further attempt to reduce women's agency? And like, what are we really kind of setting up for? And I guess another question is that, are these, negative, positive gender conversations partially what's driving kind of some of the rise of these, amongst youth culture and Gen Z of non-binary identity choices? We're seeing kind of, youth demographics being the largest percentage of people self-declaring as non-binary in history. And is it partially some of the toxicity around these gender identities that's being promoted through some of these conversations? So, when we're about to jump on the Stanley Swiggin, Taylor Swift bandwagon, let's, even the girlification of the Super Bowl with Taylor Swift themed Super Bowl parties, really like what is it that we are talking about? I think is an important conversation we all need to be having.
Oh, and then, okay, back for another palate cleanser. My notes here say circus TBD, so I have to determine that. But I think the signal we saw here was really the TikTokification of anything and everything. Really, it's like when you go to TikTok and the For You page, it's just, here's something shiny and splashy, and then something else comes in and does the same thing, and rinse and repeat. And the idea is we were starting to see signals that this would be brought into the real world, or just taken outside of TikTok into other spaces. And really feel like more of a circus if you look at that, where you're the audience and every now and then you're getting served up something totally new, something totally sensational. The example we talked about was maybe like a restaurant, which instead of just having, maybe one sort of ethnicity or one style of food, and that's served to you in a very traditional way, maybe it changes and different regions of food get presented to you in totally different ways. And you bite here and then something totally different happens. I mean, that's not the perfect example, but just thinking about a trend of how can you take what's happening on TikTok and the way that you're consuming that content and apply that into other spaces. We think that could have been big, but not deep enough for a full theme of change.
Precycling.
Boom.
And so every year I pick a fruit or vegetable that I think is going to really play a prominent role in popular culture in the year ahead. And I've never been wrong. So previous predictions include squash, particularly like kaboka, honey nut, and all those new squashes that are available in grocery stores now, and really, really delicious. I think citrus is having a big year this year as well. But really what we're looking for in 2024 is the apple. And I think there's a couple of reasons. One is the number of varieties allow for experimentation at a low cost point, which is always kind of important. You can try apples. And also you can declare your identity, right? There are many Honeycrisp haters out there who think it's too sweet or too genetically engineered. To them, I say, you're wrong. But if you're a Macintosh purist or others, there's always ways to kind of, express your identity through apple choice. And also kind of, there's a lot of residual big apple propaganda kind of left inside all of us, an apple a day and the big apple particularly, but also the apple's a perfect application of kind of, or canvas for contemporary food trends like fermentation in sours with apple cider vinegar as well. It's an excellent base for kind of popular spice combinations, clove, cinnamon, ginger, we don't need pumpkin spice, and also, the apple is one of the only grocery items that's seen a continued decrease in cost. where your average fruit went up by over 2%, your average apple has gone down in price by over 8%. And that's because of climate change, and growing conditions have improved for apples over the years, driving a pretty serious reduction in apple prices. So crunch, crunch.
Apples.
Apples.
The last one is the end of the open plan, which, thinking about how open plan homes and open plan offices have really dominated interior design for quite a while now. And thinking about the time we are in coming off of COVID, when everyone spent time with all members of their household in a big open space with no walls, where you were joining Zoom calls and you had to listen to a smoothie being made in the background, so everyone on your meeting could also hear the smoothie being made in the background. We're thinking that it might be time for walls to make a comeback. Even if you're part of a hybrid work model today, the days that you opt to go into the office, are you really likely to go in and sit in a wide open space listening to other people on various Zoom calls? No. And so we really believe that walls are making a comeback, maybe. And that means more galley kitchens in interior designs and more soundproof cubicles back in the office.
That's great news. I have a very small kitchen, and that would help. And yesterday, my brother-in-law tried to push Cosmic Crisp apple on me, which I've never had. So
And?
How was it?
I didn't have it. I was just like, oh, that prediction's coming true. Maybe we should have stretched it out.
Cosmic Crisp.
Okay, 3 more to go. Nowhere left but outside. Okay. I think last year we talked about people retreating to dark forests, which would be like WhatsApp chat groups, private Discord servers, even newsletters. But this year we're talking about a return to real forests. And I think the answer is, or the reason for this is, like, I think we all know the internet is becoming more and more garbage, right? You can probably feel it. I think a lot of people for a while now have been feeling it. Enshittification plays into that, but it's really a much bigger issue at hand. And yeah, I'm guessing all of us have had some sense of it, where you're scrolling on your phone, or you're just clicking through a website or something. But for the first time ever, there's actually evidence. This year really starting to pile up. We're seeing more and more real conviction and strong evidence. So just last week, this article came out from Amazon Web Services, their AI lab. And the quote is, "A shocking amount of the internet is machine translated garbage." And this was over 50% of the sentences found on the internet have been machine translated and are done so poorly. So like literally half the words on the internet have been created by a machine. Obviously, like the proliferation of AI, we're seeing how much of that is out there. Yeah, I mean, that's a little specific, but if we want to get like a little more general, it's The Atlantic also just last week posted this article about how the internet is being ruined by bloated junk. And they use a great example of, if you ever look for a recipe, you're like, okay, I want a recipe for dinner, healthy, something. And then you get there, and how long do you have to scroll till you get to the actual recipe? How much garbage between the top, some of it's advertising, some of it's just they're stretching out the content. And then, how many times do that before you just order pizza? It's like, I'm just going to order pizza. They also reference how many episodes a week does like Joe Rogan or other Joe Rogan-esque people just pump out of the world of podcasts that are the same length as like Scorsese movies. And that's just getting flooded and flooded. So the internet's just getting more and more sort of filled up with garbage. And there's data also that shows that just social media is just losing its grip on people. I think, the younger audiences are less and less using social media in general. And so we asked, what can't like GPTs or what can't DMs replicate? And the answer is really fresh air, real connection. So, the answer is, or the prediction is that, we're going to go outside more this year. And getting even more specific, there's going to be probably a moment in your life where you are just scrolling your phone and you're like, what am I doing? Screw this. And then in sort of direct opposition to that, you're going to say, I'm going to put myself outside. And so I think digital experiences aren't going to go anywhere. Like, I think they're still very, very important for everyone, for every brand and every individual. Follow Jared's LinkedIn. Come on. But at the same time, there's going to be a refocus on the IRL experience of brands and how important those And this really comes back to also some other data that just shows that like IRL customers are just so much more valuable to brands. They're more likely to share with their peers. They're sort of average double the size in baskets and way less likely to return. Like they're just a more valuable person. So yeah, that seems to us like the big prediction is you're going to go outside. We saw great evidence of this. LL Bean paused their social activity for a month, and then they went on Strava and challenged people to spend how much 500 hours outside with them. So pausing social activity for a month taps into this. Also using Strava taps into a purpose-built platform to do that. And of course, they got tons of PR. And if everyone does this, they're not going to get the same juice from it. But it was still a really nice signal that they're tapped into what's happening out there. So yeah, I think you'll go outside a little bit more in direct opposition to just scrolling and doom scrolling, which is, I mean, I wasn't partying Sunday night. I was doing some doom scrolling, but yeah, I would have loved to go outside. So that's a big one. And now from outside, let's go to
the Doom
Town. Whoops, sorry.
It's okay. So the idea behind new food rituals is that people are going to start kind of creating these net new locations, divorced from some of the existing social factors that have driven gathering in the past. Personally, I'm enduring a rewatch of the OC at home, not personally, but someone in my house is rewatching it. And what we're talking about here is Christmas. Last year we talked about live music booming as people seek to de-virtualize, and this trend is a little bit of an extension of that. You can paint it a bit as an inflation response, that going out to eat has gotten so expensive, or other kinds of experiences, concert ticket inflation, etc. But really, there are some deeper themes at work. People love to gather and they love to do it around food. They started by kind of sharing an apple in the nude, however many thousand years ago, and then it's kind of evolved through sacrificing rams, into a feast of seven fishes. But these rituals they're called like in-group gathering, right? The idea being is they don't reflect the diversity, cultural, religious backgrounds, the way peer groups are currently constructed, and then I think we're going to start seeing the community of the church lunch really being replaced with the tailgate. I think this weekend or this week is a particularly apt time to be talking about this. The Super Bowl is this Sunday. And it's gone from being about the games, being about the commercials, to now being about the snacks, right? And we're going to kind of continue to see these creation of these religious or kind of in-group agnostic rituals, primarily around food. Hot pot restaurants, which are all about kind of social gathering in China, they're seeing north of 10% growth. And what we're talking about here are like the creation of these new kind of divorced rituals. And so some of the impacts we're going to start seeing are possibly like a renewed focus on etiquette, an understanding of that role, right? Where bad behaviors in public are increasingly commonplace. If we are encouraging these intimate food-based gatherings, like how do we behave and what is expected of us? And, with things like perpetual stews, and all these other trends, we're really going to start seeing like a goodbye to the table for one.
Jared, you can admit to watching the OC. I am season 4 is the best.
We're not there yet. The level of drama, we're not at season 4. I don't think. This is like a product of bygone days where there's 20 plus episodes a season. So I need to get through 75, 70-ish episodes of the OC before we get to it. I guess the good parts is
good chunk of time.
It's a good chunk of time.
Slept on.
Yeah,
it's real good.
Last but not least, gender longevity. Okay, so longevity is all about living healthier for longer. Not a new thing. The desire to live healthier, to look younger, especially, is not new. But what is new and what we have noticed is the different ways in which longevity and the conversation around longevity has shifted differently among men rather than among women. So, not so long ago, a weathered-looking man was considered the symbol of, aging with dignity, or a symbol of masculinity, the silver fox. That was sort of the look of aging for men, a good look, a positive look of aging among men. Slowly, and especially over the last year, that image of aging for men has really been replaced by an image of a taut, toned tech executive who's probably in his 60s, but boasts that he has the biological insides or biological age of a 38-year-old. Thank you so much, Jeff Bezos. Whereas for women, the discourse around aging has shifted way more slowly, right? Whether you're a woman from the Bonds cold cream era or the med spa injectables era, the messaging around aging has always kind of been the same. Don't. So there's a difference there already. We're starting from a kind of very different place. The discourse around longevity is sort of focused on three different topics: aesthetics, wellness, and most recently biotechnology. So that's the science of biological reprogramming at the cell level, reversing the signs of aging at the cellular. Women are still the typical target of the first and second, right? Aesthetics, of course, wellness. Thank you so much, Gwyneth Paltrow and group. However, what we've noticed is that men have sort of been welcomed into a distinctly macho but unique world of wellness, and they call it biohacking. Biohacking includes all kinds of manly interventions that came up over the last year, new diets, new exercise regimes. Primarily, one of the most loud ones was testosterone replacement therapy, or TRT. If you haven't read about or followed the trend around Jeff Tang's tea parties, it's a great little rabbit hole. I strongly recommend it. Joe Rogan and other famous people are among his disciples. Never thought we would say Joe Rogan's name twice, but here we are. In any case, biohacking is really, for men, is really focused on improving muscle definition, boosting their virility, and ultimately improving longevity, living healthier for longer. The third topic, biotechnology, is really quite specific and has really been sort of co-opted by a specific group of individuals. Jeff Bezos, Larry Ellison, other titans in the tech world have recently invested billions into startups working to reverse aging, like I said earlier, at the cellular level. Fascinating stuff, but really is co-opted and is a focus of a specific demographic of individuals. Robert Nelson, who is a well-known hedge fund manager, has a stake in Altos Labs, which is Jeff Bezos's biotech startup, is quoted as saying, "Aging is a humanitarian disaster that kills as many people as World War II every 2 years." That is a very strong statement and endorsement for do not age. It's a real problem as far as this group is considered. So fast forward to 2024, this sort of puts us at the precipice of what we're calling the great longevity swap, where the fear of aging will start to disproportionately affect men. And we'll start to see a lot more men openly fretting about their longevity, of their look of aging, and these fringe rituals that are very sort of specific to, wealthy demographics of men, frankly, will start to become a little more mainstream. And this will create new sort of masculine coded pressures in society to conform to the aesthetics, to conform to the wellness culture and the science of manly youthfulness. Conversely, we will start to see women accepting age en masse, more, okayness with laugh lines, with gray hair. According to the New York Times, another quote, by 2025, approximately 1.1 billion women worldwide will have experienced menopause. The travel industry is listening in, and the travel industry is catering to this new niche of women, wanting to help them deal with everything from hot flashes to mood swings. So, this tells us that menopause and aging women have frankly been overlooked by not just the travel industry, but also health and medical sciences as well, right? It's great that luxury resorts like Six Senses and Canyon Ranch are getting in on the game, but we expect 2024 that we'll see a lot more open discourse around menopause, around pelvic floor disorders, and that this renewed awareness and attention will actually start to usher in new therapies for women. That is, at the end of the day, women still live 7 years longer than men. The needle hasn't really shifted there, but remains to be seen where this all goes. That's life. And that's it on number 10 for us.
Just before we jump into a quick, recap, two things. If you have any questions, please feel free to post them in the comments. We'll check in a second. And then just some thanks to, from all of us. Eric in the room with us has been, doing the production, Sam and the rest of the team at OneMethod, and Anissa who did these fantastic slides. And then on our team to Dylan, Chelsea, Matthew, everyone who kind of helped with some of the themes generation. Max, is there anyone on your side as well you wanted to?
I mean, a bunch of people helped on the thinking, so we'll hug them in private. But I want to talk about recap, and hopefully there's a few questions at least. You can throw hardballs, that's fine.
Please do.
And I'm curious on your, I already shared. For me, I've been talking a lot about individualism with clients and in projects, and then enshittification has been sort of that fun dinner party topic. But what do you guys? What have you been referencing lately out of these 10?
Apples, big apples.
Yeah.
I think the longevity discussion.
With clients, but also as a woman among friends, it's definitely a big topic.
And I think, the idea behind new food rituals and some of the underlying themes are relevant to people who are considering getting people back in the office. There's a reason why free lunch or a barista or something really gets people to show up. And like we said, understanding why and what people are looking to get out of in-person interactions, I think is going to be really instrumental in some of these efforts to drive devirtualization. Again, great. Well, look, thank you so much, everyone.
Yeah. That's it. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Enjoy.